Welcome to this explainer on the Kaivalya Upanishad. Today, we're mapping out one of the absolute most profound psychological and spiritual journeys of human consciousness ever recorded. And we're looking at a text that doesn't just hand you abstract philosophy. No, this is a highly practical, systematic dismantling of how we actually perceive reality, our physical bodies, and our own minds.
Okay, so let's start right at the end by defining our ultimate destination, Kaivalya. Now translated, this basically means remaining utterly alone. But it's a very specific, kind of mind-bending type of aloneness. It's this beautiful paradox where you are entirely solitary, yet the whole of existence is literally contained within your being. You're not isolated from the universe, you realize you actually are the universe.
And this brings up a foundational rule of that universe: balance. The source text points out that life operates on a strict, non-negotiable principle of equilibrium. Intelligence and unintelligence, good and evil, they exist in perfectly equal proportion. Why does this matter? Well, because existence relies on that exact tension to generate energy. Think of two opposing bricks leaning against each other in an archway. That opposition creates strength and stability, right? Life requires these opposites. Wishing for a world of just good ignores the very architecture of reality.
All right, moving into Section 1, the illusion of Maya and mental hypnosis. So the Upanishads describes Maya, not as some, mystical fog rolling in, but as a collective mental hypnosis. It's the mind's uncanny ability to construct complete illusions and absolutely convince us they are base reality. Think about it for a second. Our happiness, our sorrow, our social roles, they're all products of this hypnosis. Even social rituals, like a marriage ceremony, act as these deeply powerful hypnotic processes that make temporary bonds feel like permanent, ultimate realities. Recognizing that is your very first step to waking up.
Notice exactly how the trap of this hypnosis is framed. We are constantly chasing pleasure, right? But the text starkly points out that misery is simply the shadow of that desire. You literally cannot hold on to pleasure without dragging misery along right behind it. As long as you're clinging to one, you're giving the other a foundation to exist. If you drop that desperate grasping for pleasure, the entire basis for your suffering vanishes completely.
Which brings us to Section 2, preparing the physical vessel and physical purification.
You simply can't reach a higher state of awareness if your physical energy is leaking out all over the place. Let's look at the actual mechanics of the Sukhasana yoga posture. This isn't just about finding a comfortable way to sit, it's literal engineering for your body's electricity. By keeping your spine perfectly straight to minimize gravity's pull, crossing your feet, placing your palms together, and sitting on a non-conductive mat, you are creating a closed internal circuit. Your energy stops dissipating outward through your fingers and toes, and instead it starts rising upward to the brain.
But posture alone isn't going to cut it. Echoing the modern psychologist Wilhelm Reich, the text highlights that true physical purification requires profound emotional release. Suppressed emotions, like unexpressed anger or deep grief, they literally accumulate in your body's tissues, creating impurity and physical heaviness. To achieve the lightness you need for meditation, you have to experience catharsis. You must release those deeply suppressed feelings, even if it just means allowing yourself to cry wholeheartedly to wash away that internal pressure.
Now on to Section 3, the trap of knowledge and moving beyond the intellect.
The Upanishad warns us that scholarly knowledge can actually become its own form of bondage, puffing up the ego rather than dissolving it. There's this amazing story here about Zen master Bokuju. An atheist aggressively tried to bait him into a debate about God. Bokuju simply replied that he wouldn't argue because the man's denial made absolutely no dent in the truth of existence. Bokuju was so grounded in his own direct experience that he said, even if God himself came down and said, "I don't exist," he'd just smile and ignore it. Direct experience requires absolutely no external validation.
We can really see how this builds into Buddha's famous analogy of the man struck by a poisoned arrow. The scholar, when hit, becomes totally paralyzed by endless alternatives. He's overanalyzing the angle of the arrow, the type of wood it's made of, who might have shot it. Meanwhile, a simple, unscholarly person just pulls the thing out. Excessive knowledge paralyzes decisive action by generating constant doubt. True conclusiveness doesn't come from building a massive library in your head. It comes from direct, undeniable experience. And that leads us perfectly to the concept of Vedanta. Literally, this translates to the end of knowledge. It's the point where both your ignorance and your burning desire to know things are completely dropped. See, knowledge is just a tool to remove ignorance. It's like using one thorn to dig another thorn out of your foot. But once that first thorn is out, you don't keep the second thorn, right? You throw them both away. Vedanta is discarding that final thorn, leaving you in a state of pure, effortless, non-dual awareness.
Let's look at Section 4, Tools for the Journey, Effort and Prayer.
The text emphasizes a really fascinating duality here, effort and prayer. You see, what you are searching for is way too vast to be found by your effort alone, but it will absolutely not be found without your effort either. Prayer acknowledges our human limits and invokes the grace of existence. But if you pray and remain completely passive, nothing happens. Effort demonstrates your readiness to rise up. Together, surrender and action unite to create the immense energy required for actual transformation. So, to prepare your heart for this transformation, the text details Buddha's 4 Brahma Vihar, or methods of purification. Before you even try to meditate, practice these. First, compassion, which naturally drives out violence. Second, friendliness toward all existence. Third, cheerfulness, because a sad person subconsciously wants to spread misery to others just to feel comfortable. And finally, indifference. And that just means you remain centered and balanced, regardless of whether you meet roaring success or absolute failure.
The crucial takeaway here is that you have to take action. And yes, you will stumble. Standing perfectly still out of the fear of making a mistake is far worse than actually making one. Mistakes are not failures. They are literally the engine of your maturity. Moving forward, even if it's imperfectly, changes you. Every single realized mistake ensures you won't repeat it, opening up the way to the right path.
Section 5, The Power of Awareness and Conserving Inner Energy.
Awareness is basically fueled by conserved energy. If you're leaking energy, your awareness dims. It's that simple. This highly actionable twofold discipline changes everything. Step 1, stop wasting energy on useless sensory habits. We're talking mindless doom scrolling on your phone, gossiping, or even just unnecessary talking. Step 2, actively draw your energy inward or receive it consciously from nature. Just focusing fully on a tree or the open sky literally rejuvenates your nervous system.
Now, what you really should take away from this is that spiritual practice isn't some separate activity you do for 20 minutes a day. It is a layer you add to your existing life. The text notes that chanting mechanically without awareness just dulls your intelligence. Whether you are eating, breathing, or walking to your car, consciously layering awareness over those mundane actions transforms you. The doer slowly fades, and the liberated inner witness emerges.
And finally, Section 6, Entering the Void, the Ultimate State.
The sage guides us through the ultimate act of disidentification. He tells us to systematically strip away the very layers of our existence. First, the waking state. You are not your job, your wealth, your conflicts, or your status. Drop it. Next, the dream state. You are not the thoughts or images that flicker through your resting mind. Finally, the deep sleep state. You are not even the hidden seeds of desire waiting to sprout. You drop all 3.
And when you cancel out your waking achievements, your dreams, and your unconscious desires, what is left in your hands? Well, a void, absolute emptiness. Now, this sounds terrifying to the ego, but the sage assures us that you absolutely must pass through this empty space. Because it's only in this vast, quiet emptiness that you can finally see the peak of what you truly are, unclouded by the hypnosis of Maya.
Which leaves us with this final, profound image from the text. So many of us treat spirituality as if we're a block of ice floating in the ocean, trying to study the water from a safe distance. But knowledge implies distance. The divine reality isn't something external to be known, it is the reality you become when your ego dissolves. So the ultimate question is this: are you going to spend your life safely trying to know the ocean from a distance, or are you finally ready to apply the inner heat of discipline and become the melting ice?